Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get the committee started, and I want to welcome you all to what is, I believe, the fifth nominations hearing by the Judiciary Committee. Today we will hear from four nominees to the federal district courts. Del Droz to be United States District Judge for the Eastern District of California. Ann Donnelly to be United States District Judge for the Eastern District of New York. Lawrence Villardo to be the United States District Judge from the Western District of New York, and LaShawn D'Arcy Hall to be the United States Judge from the Eastern District of New York. Welcome to you all, and especially a welcome to Ms. Hall's little daughter out there. Thank you for joining us. I know your family must be very proud. You should be. This is quite an honor for you to come before this committee for the nominations process. I do have a statement from the chairman that I'll submit for the record. At this time, I believe that we will go directly to Senator Boxer, so that, Senator, if you'd like to introduce your nominee.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. Members of the committee, it's nice to be here. I'm honored to be here. Before I introduce formally Judge Droz and introduce you to his family, I want to thank you so much for this, because we've got a serious problem in the Eastern District. It has been declared a judicial emergency. Cases are piling up. We don't have enough judges to review them. This is an area of the state that's growing rapidly. And according to the Judicial Conference, there are 1,000 cases per active judge in the Eastern District, 1,000 cases per active judge, one of the highest caseloads in the nation. With only one active judge sitting in Fresno, judges in Sacramento have had to take over some of the civil cases. Now, this is a district where the Judicial Conference has recommended doubling the number of judgeships to just handle the current caseload. We just can't allow this seat to be vacant any longer, because, as we all know, justice delayed is justice denied, and that's happening to too many Californians. Fortunately, we have a real consensus candidate for this vacancy, and I'd ask Judge Droz and his wife, Jeanette, and their two sons, Doug and Paul, to stand, please, and just wave to the members. And we all know how important family members are to those who seek public office, and we welcome them. The judge has been serving as a magistrate judge on the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District since 1997. Since 2011, he has served as Chief United States Magistrate Judge for the Eastern District. 35 years ago, he served as a law clerk to Judge Lawrence Carlton, Judge of the United States District Court for the Eastern District. Prior to taking his position as a judge, he worked in private practice in our state's capital, Sacramento. The judge received his bachelor's degree in 1977 from Cal State University at San Diego, and he won his law degree from the University of California at Los Angeles School of Law, where he was a member of the Order of the Coif. His 18 years on the bench serving the people of the Eastern District and his previous years in private practice make him an excellent candidate to fill this vacancy. In closing, I am proud to be here today with Judge Droz, who received a unanimous, well-qualified rating from the American Bar Association. And I would like, again, to thank this committee for holding this hearing and moving forward on this important nomination. And I look forward to working with you as the process moves forward. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your courtesy.
Thank you, Senator Boxer. I know you have a very busy schedule. Of course, you are welcome to stay as long as you can, but feel free to leave when you deem it necessary. Senator Schumer, would the gentleman...
Thank you. Good morning, or good afternoon. Time flies when you're having fun. Thank you, Chairman Tillis, Senator Franken, Senator Gillibrand, my colleague in New York, and Senator Boxer, my dear friend since 1982, when we both were in Congress together. I want to thank Chairman Grassley for scheduling this hearing. And these nominees have been waiting patiently for a long time. I'm thrilled that the committee's finally moving forward with their nominations. It's important to them, but more important to the districts they serve, which need them desperately. 3 of the 4 nominees before our committee have been nominated for seats designated as judicial emergencies. Now, that doesn't mean, something like there are a whole lot of fires or robberies. It means we don't have enough judges on the bench to cover the cases, and the backlogs are horrible. And the fourth, Mr. Villardo, from my home state, from Buffalo, is nominated to the court where there are no currently active judges sitting. That's how bad these backlogs is. Buffalo has one of the busiest federal court systems in the country, and also one of the worst backlogs of cases. It can take 5 years for a case to go to trial. Imagine how long you'd have to wait for justice. It's a serious issue, so I'm grateful, Mr. Chairman, that we're taking a step forward and addressing it today. There are no more important values than the speedy application of justice and the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. And frankly, neither of these can be achieved without judges on the bench. Western New York has a backlog of cases and a current dearth of judges. We need a candidate of Mr. Villardo's experience and quality to get approved by this body with all due speed so this issue can be addressed. So now let me turn to the introduction of the two outstanding lawyers whom I've had the pleasure and privilege of recommending to the President for nomination. First, Lawrence J. Villardo for the Western District, which is mainly, it's Buffalo, Rochester, and the western section of New York. And many people from New York City and its area forget that we have a huge population upstate. And the Western District has millions, certainly over 2 million people who live there, bigger than some states. Mr. Villardo is a true Buffalonian. You can tell just by talking to him, and he's going to be a credit to the bench in his hometown. He received his bachelor's degree from Canisius College, a great Western New York institution that I've had the pleasure of visiting many a time. He graduated summa cum laude. He then attended Harvard Law School, graduated magna cum laude. Having gone there, I know how hard it is to graduate magna cum laude at Harvard Law School. I didn't. While in law school, he was an editor of the Harvard Law Review, a distinction he shares with our president. Following his graduation from law school, Mr. Villardo clerked for the Honorable Irving Goldberg of the Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit in Dallas, Texas. But fortunately for Western New York, he quickly went back home and founded one of the leading law firms of the region. Throughout his distinguished career, Mr. Villardo has always made time to give back and help mentor and inspire younger lawyers. Prior to starting his own firm, he served as an appellate practice faculty member at SUNY Buffalo's School of Law and as a constitutional law faculty member at Canisius Law School. He also served as a senior editor for the American Bar Association's Litigation Journal. He's a frequent speaker on appellate justice and legal ethics, among other topics, at law presentations and Bar Association seminars. Mr. Villardo's credentials are certainly excellent, something I look for in all judges. I look for 3 criteria when I choose judges. They are excellence. They should be legally excellent. I don't want too many political hacks or any political hacks on the bench. They should be moderate. As you might imagine, I don't like judges too far right, but I also don't like them too far left, because judges at the extremes tend to want to make law rather than follow the law. And I look for diversity. When we can have a diverse bench, it's a great thing, and young kids can look up to that bench and aspire to be on it one day themselves. So he meets the criteria of excellence and of moderation, and he's respected by practitioners and judges across the political and ideological spectrum for his even temperament and fair-minded way of thinking. And he's fundamentally a classic Buffalonian. I just love Buffalo. I love going up there. What's a classic Buffalonian? Salt of the earth, honest, grounded. Buffalo's in Larry's bones. It's part of who he is. And like so many other people from the region, the city has made him tough, level-headed, fair, and decent. So Western New York will be incredibly lucky to have him on the bench. And now let me turn to Judge Ann Marie Donnelly, who currently serves in the New York State Courts. Judge Donnelly is a graduate of the University of Michigan, received her J.D. from Ohio State University College of Law, Upon graduation, Judge Donnelly joined the New York County DA's office, one of the finest state prosecutor offices in the nation. She served for a quarter of a century, and her reputation there is legendary. When you mention that you know Ann Donnelly to anyone who served in D.A. Morgenthau's office, one of the finest DA's office in the country, they say she was one of the best. She is really admired, even though she's been out of that office for quite a while now. She accumulated recognitions and awards along the way. She worked in the Appeals Bureau and appeared regularly in the Appellate Division and the New York Court of Appeals. In 1989, she was assigned to the Major Offense Career Criminal Program, a specialized bureau that targeted repeat offenders and violent felons. And 2 years later, Judge Donnelly was promoted to Senior Trial Counsel and became a member of the Sex Crimes Prosecution Unit. In 2005, she was named Bureau Chief of the Family Violence and Child Abuse Bureau. And in 2009, she joined New York State's Court of Claims. Over the past 6 years, her assignments have the Supreme Courts, which is what New York calls its trial courts, of 3 different counties, including New York County, where she currently serves, hearing criminal cases. Her stellar academic record, her lengthy career in public service, years she has spent honing her judicial acumen, all clearly qualify Judge Donnelly as an excellent candidate for the bench. However, Judge Donnelly has more than just a brilliant resume. She is at her core a kind, thoughtful, and compassionate person. Anyone who knows her or who has interacted with her even briefly knows she is fair and open-minded, has the temperament to make her well-suited to be a federal judge. She cares about the law and the legal profession. In addition, her many years of judicial and government service. In addition to those, she has helped cultivate the next generation of lawyers. She's a fellow in the American College of Trial Lawyers, regularly judges mock trials and moot court competitions. She serves as a judge for the Jerome Prince Memorial Moot Court competition at Brooklyn Law School. She's even on the advisory board for the Thurgood Marshall mock trial program. That's for 7th and 8th grade students as they prepare and try a criminal case. And I also must add, Mr. Chairman, she meets with the confirmation of Judge Donnelly and Ms. D.R.C. Hall from the Eastern District. Our bench will remain one of the most diverse judicial districts in the country. So, and I want to say one more thing. She has a great family, because I know Ann well, and she'll introduce them, but it's a great sight to see them all from all over, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts. She was raised in Ohio. Her father was a mayor. He's looking down from heaven and very proud, I know that. So I'm going to ask just the whole greater Donnelly family to stand. You'll see it's a great sight. Please get up, all you Donnellys. There they are, in their glory. And they're a great family. I know many of them. So it's nice to see them all here and so proud of Ann's great accomplishment today. So let me just say, Mr. Chairman, you can see these are 2 immensely qualified candidates for the federal bench. They're erudite, they're experienced, they're deeply respected throughout New York. And beyond that, each one has a spirit for public service that shines through in their respective roles as teachers and leaders in the legal community. I hope, I pray, that we can move quickly to move them through the committee and onto the Senate floor. And finally, I'll leave the introduction to Senator Gillibrand, who nominated Ms. Darcy Hall, but I just want to acknowledge that this is another terrific nominee, and I commend Senator Gillibrand for recommending her. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our judicial candidates and for their greater families that have come along to share their joy.
Thank you, Senator Schumer. Senator Gillibrand, you may introduce your candidate, the nominee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to Senator Schumer for his excellent introduction of our nominees today. I have the very special honor to be here to introduce LaShawn D'Arcy Hall and offer my strong support for her nomination to the United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York. And I would like to thank President Obama for acting on my recommendation and nominating another superbly qualified female jurist to the federal bench. Ms. D'Arcy Hall's credentials are outstanding, and her experiences as a lawyer are varied and diverse. Our country would be stronger with women like LaShawn D'Arcy Hall serving on the federal bench. Ms. DRC Hall is currently a partner at the international law firm of Morrison & Foerster, where she specializes in high-stakes, complex commercial litigation. She has years of valuable experience as a public servant, including time serving as a commissioner with the New York State Joint Commission on Public Ethics, which oversees New York State executive and legislative branches' compliance with ethics and lobbying laws and regulations. In 2011, Ms. DRC Hall was appointed by Mayor Bloomberg as a commissioner of the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission. She also served as a member of the Board of Trustees for the Neighborhood Defender Service of Harlem, and she is a member of the Howard University School of Law Board of Visitors. She's a graduate of Howard University School of Law, and she served as a member of the United States Air Force. In other words, LaShawn DRC Hall is a highly accomplished lawyer who has chosen to use her intellect and skills for the greater good of public service. For her work in promoting diversity in the legal profession, Ms. DRC Hall was honored by the New York City Bar Association as the recipient of the 2009 Diversity Champion Award. And if her nomination is approved, her presence would add much-needed diversity, another female voice to our federal bench. I have no doubts that Ms. DRC Hall's experience and qualifications make her a superb candidate for this judgeship. She is dedicated to serving the citizens of New York, and she is committed to making her city, state, and nation more fair and just. LaShawn DRC Hall will be an excellent jurist on the federal bench, and I was very honored to recommend her for this position, and I urge swift approval of her nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee members.
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. And again, I know you're busy, so please feel free to leave when you need to. If we could have the nominees come forward and stand. If you'll please raise your right hand. Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to receive or about to give before the committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You may be seated. Now, before we get started, we'll provide you all with an opportunity, if you wish, to make an opening statement and to introduce your family, and we'll just start from we'll actually just start from left to right to make it easy. So we'll start with you, Mr. Droz.
Thank you, Senator. I would first like to take the opportunity to thank Senator Boxer for her very gracious introduction, as well as her recommendation of my nomination to the President. I'd also like to thank Chairman Grassley and Ranking Member Leahy, as well as the rest of the committee, for scheduling this hearing. As well as to Senator Boxer's staff, her Judicial Selection Committee, and Senator Feinstein and her staff. And finally, of course, to the President for bestowing on me the honor of the nomination itself. Lucky enough to have with me quite a few family and friends today, many of whom made their way all the way from California. The most important, of course, my wife of 32 years, Janet Vine, who has steadfastly supported me and our sons and everything that we've ever done. Also, my son Doug, our oldest, who graduated from Claremont McKenna College and works in Sacramento, is here with us, as is my son Paul, who was able to take a few days off of his final quarter at Cal Poly Pomona and catch the red-eye flight and get in this morning. I also have with me my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, Dave and Amanda Hall from West Sacramento, my cousin Christine and her husband Rich from Phoenix, Maryland, my niece Lauren, who's attending graduate school here at Georgetown University, our cousin Jennifer Nebo, who along with our cousin James, her husband, and their newborn Carter reside here in Washington, D.C., and finally our longtime family friend from here in Washington, Bobby Masali, is also here with us. Not here, but I know watching on the webcast today are my brother Don in Orange County, California, and his entire extended family in the Pacific Northwest. My sister, Lisa Toby, along with her family from Minnetonka, Minnesota, I know is watching, as are all of them. My brothers and sisters-in-law, Jimmy, Janice, Harry, and Diane back in Sacramento, and all of my hard-working colleagues, chamber staff and clerk's office staff in the Eastern District of California. And finally, with me in spirit here today, I know are my mom, who passed away in 2013, as well as my dad, who passed away in 2004. My dad was quite an accomplished individual. He served on a destroyer escort at the end of World War II, came out of the Navy in Southern California, went to work as a plumber at the LA County USC Medical Center, and eventually became the executive director of the entire hospital. I know they'd be proud.
Well, thank you, Judge Rose. I know that from time to time when I'm on C-SPAN, my mama still posts on Facebook how proud she is. So I'm sorry that your parents are not here to see this, but congratulations, Judge Rose. Judge Donnelly.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. I'd like to thank Chairman Grassley and Ranking Member
If we can turn on the mic. Thank you, Judge.
Okay, that sounds better. Thank you, Senator Tillis. I would like to thank Chairman Grassley and Ranking Member Leahy for scheduling this hearing. Senator Schumer, I so appreciate that kind introduction. I would like to thank the President for the honor of this nomination. I would like to congratulate my fellow nominees on their nominations and their accomplished careers. I'm very lucky, to, as Senator Schumer said, to have quite a few people here with me today. First is my husband of 30 years, Michael Toth. We are here with our, we're very proud of our two daughters, Rebecca Toth and Margaret Toth. They're here with their boyfriends. Maggie's here with Andy Worley, and Becky Toth is here with Dan Jones. My mother, my wonderful mother, is here from Ohio, Mary Donnelly. My sister, Sarah Hopkins, is here with her husband, Dr. Jeffrey Hopkins, and their three wonderful girls, Callie Hopkins, Josie Hopkins, and 5-year-old Jane Hopkins. My brother, Dr. Thomas Donnelly, and his wife, Dr. Heidi Donnelly, my beloved sister-in-law, are here with their wonderful daughter, Imelda Donnelly. My dear friend, Audrey Moore, is here, as is my dear friend and mentor, Linda Fairstein. My two brothers, Bill Donnelly and John Donnelly, are back in Ohio with their families, and my wonderful mother-in-law, Mary Toth, is in Michigan. I would also like to acknowledge my wonderful colleagues on New York State Supreme Court and for all of their guidance and friendship in my time as a judge. And finally, I would like to mention two people that I wish very much were here. My wonderful father-in-law, Edward Toth, and my father, Jack Donnelly, who would have had an excellent time at this hearing. And I know that he is watching, and I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Judge Donnelly. Mr. Velardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the members of the committee, especially Chairman Grassley and Ranking Member Leahy, for giving me an opportunity today that until now I didn't even dare to dream about. I'd like to thank the President for nominating me, and I'd like to especially thank Senator Schumer for that very warm and generous introduction, and also for having the confidence in me to recommend me to the White House. With me today is the love of my life, my wife of 32 years, Jeannie Velardo, our daughter, Dr. Bridget Velardo Lyons, who is a child psychologist practicing in Western New York, and her husband, Patrick Lyons, who is more like a son than a son-in-law, and is working with the Social Security Administration in Western New York. Our daughter, Lauren Velardo, is here. After 2 years volunteering with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, Lauren decided that she wanted to serve underserved populations by working in the medical profession. and so she is studying to be a doctor by taking the biology and chemistry classes that are required for that. She was a physics major in college at the University of Buffalo. And also our son, Alexander Villardo, who is working as a volunteer this year at his and my alma mater, Canisius High School, as part of their alumni volunteer corps. Alexander will attend law school at the University of Buffalo this fall. Also, my nephew is here from New Jersey, Carl Legg, and today is his birthday, so happy birthday, Carl. With me today are some of my very closest friends, former Ambassador Howard Gutman and his wife, Dr. Michelle Lowinger, from the class of '73 at Canisius High School, Jim Shedd, John McGrath, and Bill Parachek, and a recognition of a few people who are not here. First and most important, my parents. Both of them are no longer with us. Neither of them had any more than a high school education, but both of them had an appreciation of how important education is, so that they insisted that their 4 children attend college, and they encouraged us to go even further than that. I know they're watching from a better place. I'd also like to acknowledge in that regard my brothers, Mark Villardo, Dr. Joe Villardo, and Dr. Michael Villardo. I'd also like to acknowledge my in-laws, Mr. and Mrs. Carl Gambino, who are watching on the internet if they can figure how the computer works. And I'd also like to acknowledge all my family and friends back in Buffalo who are watching, especially my partners, our associates, and the staff at the best law firm anyone could dream about working at, Connors and Villardo. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Villardo, and I know I speak on behalf of all Americans for thanking Buffalo for the chicken wing. Football's never been the same. Ms. Hall.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. I'd like to thank Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Leahy, and the entire committee for scheduling this hearing today. My heartfelt thanks go to Senator Gillibrand for her recommendation and for her kind introduction, and as well to Senator Schumer for his support. Of course, I must extend my thanks as well to President Barack Obama for the honor of his nomination. I hope that you will indulge me just a few minutes more as I recognize my family and friends. Thank you to my husband, Courtney Caesar Hall, for his unyielding support through all of my endeavors, personally and professionally. To my greatest gift, my daughter, Jaden Hall, who reluctantly missed chess class to be here today. To my inspiration and my best friend, my mother, Patricia D'Arcy. To my stepchildren, Terrence, Rachel, and Alexander Hall, my sister, Motique Ayudeli, and my mother-in-law, Doris Hall. I'd also like to say thank you to my dear friends who are here today, Kedrick Payne, Monica Azar, and Sayu Mazumdar. As well to my partners and colleagues at the wonderful law firm of Morrison and Forster, including my friend and partner Jamie Levitt, my colleagues Monica Castro and Joanna Zanise, who are each here today. I must also extend a thank you to the entire Howard University School of Law family, many of whom came here today to support me, including my classmates, Eugene Akers, Aaron Taylor, Brandy Harden, Sahai Marshall, and Tamika Taylor, as well as Dean Crooms, Dean McGahey, and my trial ad professor, Professor Good. Finally, a thank you to all of my friends and family who have supported me personally and professionally throughout the years, many of whom are watching these proceedings from home. Thank you.
Thank you all, and to all the family and friends, again, welcome. I know it's a proud moment for you. It should be. Judge Droz, I'm going to start with you on questions. You presided over Green versus Solano County Jail in a case where the maximum security inmate claimed that not being allowed to attend religious services was a violation of his religious liberty under the Religious Land Use Institutionalized Persons Act and the First Amendment. I'd like to have you focus your analysis under that act. You held that not being allowed to attend religious services was not a substantial burden on an inmate's practice of religion, but the Ninth Circuit disagreed and also remanded to find whether a ban on group worship was the least restrictive means under the RLU. I hate acronyms. The Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. Do you agree with the Ninth Circuit's reasoning?
Senator, of course, I was reversed in my finding and recommendation was adopted, and I was reversed.
I know going into it you didn't agree with them.
I was reversed in that instance, and of course, I am bound by the decisions of the Ninth Circuit and would apply the holding in Green in all future cases, and have and do.
Where would you have disagreed on the reasoning?
Senator, in Green, I will say this. My recollection of that case is that the pro se plaintiff's pleadings were relatively challenging to characterize and to decipher, and that's quite often the case. I did my best to characterize what I believed to be the arguments, and when the case went up on appeal, the Court of Appeals was able to discern a somewhat different argument, I felt, than what I believed that I had been presented with at the time. I'm bound by their determination and would follow it. Beyond that, I have no other thoughts.
Thank you. Ms. Hall, in your questionnaire you stated that you worked on a pro bono death penalty case early in your career. Can you describe the work you did on that case?
Thank you for the question, Senator. My role on that case involved an argument with regard to jury selection, and the argument specifically went to the ineffective assistance of counsel in the jury selection, as well as the improper conduct of the prosecutor in that case. And in that role, I was an advocate advocating on behalf of my client.
And could you give me an idea of your views on the constitutionality of the death penalty?
I believe that the constitutionality of the death penalty is well settled, and it is deemed constitutional.
And if confirmed, would you be able to impose the death penalty on a criminal defendant if required by law?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. Mr. Velardo, I think throughout your career you've had some involvement with supporting members of political parties as an advisor, donor, or fundraiser. There's, of course, nothing wrong with that. This said, should you be confirmed, your political history might concern some litigants who appear before you. So what assurances can you give this committee if confirmed your decisions will be grounded in legal precedent and the text of the law rather than any political ideology?
Thank you for that question, Senator. I really have been involved in politics precious little in Western New York. It's usually been when a friend has asked me to get involved. I'm proud to say that I have support from both sides of the aisle in Western New York, and the Republican support is every bit as strong as the Democratic support. And I can assure you that once confirmed, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, lifetime tenure means that you owe nothing to anyone. And I would owe no debts. I would follow the law. I would follow the rule of law. I would follow the precedent from controlling jurisdictions by which I am bound and apply the law as dispassionately as possible.
Thank you. And Judge Donnelly, from your questionnaire, it appears that you have limited experience with civil matters, either in practice or as a judge. If confirmed as a federal district court judge, you'll be presiding over both civil and criminal matters. What have you done or will you do to prepare yourself for that side of the law?
Thank you for that question, Senator Tillis. In my 25 years as an assistant district attorney and in my 6 years as a state court judge, I've been lucky to have been challenged by very complicated cases and have been required to get up to speed quickly on issues that I wasn't previously familiar with, such as complex securities, fraud, white-collar cases, and violent crime as well. With respect to getting up to speed on civil matters, I am committed to hitting the ground running. I plan to take advantage of all of the resources that are offered by the Federal Judicial Center, as well as consulting with my colleagues on the federal bench, and I look forward to that challenge.
Thank you. Senator Franken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on your meteoric rise.
Say that again. My mom's listening.
Mrs. Tillis, congratulations on having a son who is chairman this early in his Senate career. You're welcome. I don't think we've had this much family and friends here at a hearing, so congratulations to all of you for having a lot of friends. Ms. Hall, in addition to your considerable experience in civil litigation and commercial law, your background also reflects a commitment to public service. Former mayor of Bloomberg appointed you to serve on the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission, for example. But one experience in particular caught my eye, which is your service on the New York State Joint Commission on Public Ethics, which is tasked with ensuring compliance with New York State ethics and lobbying laws. Can you tell us how your experience on that commission, where you participated in confidential hearings and considered sensitive information, will influence your work as a judge?
Thank you, Senator. I believe that my work on the New York State Joint Commission on Public Ethics, as well as my public service on the Taxi Limousine Commission and my service in the United States Air Force, has helped me develop the temperament that I think is important and necessary for a district court judge. In particular, I believe that I had to demonstrate fairness, integrity, thoughtfulness, and hard work and in my service on both of the commissions, as well as my time on the United States Air Force. And I believe that I would take that temperament, if given the opportunity, in my service on the Eastern District of New York.
So I take it that you think that fairness, integrity, thoughtfulness, and hard work are good qualities to have as a judge?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I was trying to trick you. Mr. Velardo, I'd like to find out more about your experience as it relates to judging. My understanding is that you clerked for Judge Irving Goldberg on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Yes, sir.
What did that perspective teach you about sitting behind the bench and weighing the arguments of two sides equally? What other experiences have put you in the position of arbiter rather than advocate?
Thank you for that question, Senator. The experience clerking for Judge Goldberg was a fabulous experience. It taught me about fairness and impartiality. Taught me about waiting and listening to everything that the litigants had to say and making a decision afterwards. It taught me about making decisions, too. It's so important to make decisions quickly, not so quickly that you haven't given consideration to all the arguments, but quickly enough that you move cases along, because as Senator Schumer said earlier, there is quite a backlog in the court. So I was taught that by my clerkship experience. I've also been fortunate enough to have served as a hearing officer and as an arbitrator in a number of cases. And that has taught me the perspective of not being an advocate, of looking down the middle and being fair to both sides. And again, not making up your mind until everybody said everything that they had to say and then deciding. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Donnelly, as the chair said, you have a lot of experience in criminal cases, not just in your current role as judge, but in your career as a prosecutor. But nonetheless, I'd imagine that sentencing convicted defendants must be one of the most difficult jobs that you face as a judge. Could you talk about the approach you take to sentencing and how that has been informed by your time as a prosecutor and looking forward how you would balance the need for sentencing with the need for rehabilitation in particular cases.
Thank you for that question, Senator Franken. Yes, you are correct that imposing sentence in a criminal case is among the most difficult tasks that a judge faces. And the factors that the judge is obligated to consider when determining the sentence to impose includes many factors: the severity of the crime, the effect on the community of where I am currently sitting in Manhattan, the effect on the particular victim, and the defendant's background as well. The cases that I have been presiding over most recently often involve devastating crimes to our communities involving gang violence and murders, and the sentences are necessarily heavy. But frequently in our courts we see very young defendants, and that is the place where I believe that our judicial system has the opportunity to perhaps turn someone around. In New York, you have the opportunity of affording a defendant youthful offender treatment, which I have done on many occasions. It's certainly a risk to the that a judge takes when you do that, but it is certainly one of the tools that you have to perhaps save someone from what is bound to be a life of crime if they're not turned around.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Sorry I didn't get to you, Judge, but
I'll deal with them.
But Senator Klobuchar is I don't envy you. Thank you, Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Klobuchar, would you mind, we have no Republican members present now, if I maybe ask just a couple more questions before you proceed?
That's fine.
Thank you. Judge Droz, when you were a defense attorney, you were quoted in an article saying, I believe this is the correct quote, "Now the judge is almost irrelevant. You can bargain around the judge. You almost have to. When drug defendants plead guilty in federal court, prosecutors usually drop some of the counts charged in an indictment, a move that frequently lowers the maximum possible sentence. In some cases, they drop all counts and substitute a charge carrying a lesser sentence. Does that accurately reflect your opinion, and do you believe there's any value in mandatory minimums? And if confirmed, will you apply the mandatory minimum sentences?"
Let me start with the end of the question first, Senator. I most definitely will apply all applicable mandatory minimum sentences where called upon by the law. In terms of that quote in that newspaper article from probably 20-some years ago, I was speaking as an advocate. That was my job at the time. And I certainly understand the difference between my job at the time and the job that I've served for the last 18 years as a United States magistrate judge. And I think my record shows that. But I think actually what I was addressing in those comments in large part had to do with application of what was then the brand new United States sentencing guidelines, and a little bit less on mandatory minimums, although to an extent it was. And my comment was meant to just point out that charge bargaining at the outset was affecting judicial discretion in terms of addressing an appropriate sentence in an entire case, and that the discretion had at that point seemed to have been moved more into the hands of the assistant United States attorney who is electing what charges to bring than being left to the judge at the end of the case when we knew what the result was going to be. And I expressed some concern about that.
Ms. Hall, do you believe a judge's background has an impact on their judicial decision-making, and how will your background inform decisions that you will make as a judge?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I believe that variety of experiences that we all have informs the viewpoint with which, or the lens with which we view the world. I don't believe, however, that my background will have any direct impact on any determination that I make if I were fortunate enough to be confirmed as a judge. Instead, what would guide me as a judge would be the rule of law. And I pledge today that if I have the opportunity to be confirmed, that I would adhere to the rule of law.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Judge Donnelly, can you identify any mistakes you made early in your judicial career that will help you as you transition into the federal judgeship?
Well, the transition from advocate to a judge is definitely a learning curve, and I haven't cataloged the mistakes that I've made. I'm sure they are. I'm sure they exist. But my judicial philosophy, in my 6 years on the New York Supreme Court, has been one of a fidelity to the rule of law, a respect for the people who appear before me, according every witness, litigant, a juror, dignity, making sure that my rulings are transparent so that the reasoning is clear, and a work ethic which involves a thorough knowledge of the applicable law and the factual record. And I believe that adherence to that philosophy minimizes the mistakes that a judge is apt to make.
Thank you, Judge Donnelly. And finally, Mr. Velardo, you've represented numerous targets or witnesses in False Claims Act investigations. While attorneys most diligently and zealously represent their clients, your practice involving the False Claims Act has been focused on defending against whistleblowers' allegations. If confirmed, how will you handle such actions if they're brought before your bench?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. I will handle them the same way I handle all cases brought before me, and that is fairly and impartially by applying the rule of law. District judges are not elected by anyone. They don't sit on a panel with other judges who can hold them in check. They don't have en banc courts to look at what they do. They decide cases based on what the law is, not on what the law should be, not on what they think the law ought to be, or what they wish the law should be. So handling whistleblower cases will be just like handling any other case. That is, applying the rule of law, applying precedent, and doing so fairly and impartially.
Thank you, Mr. Velardo. And Senator Klobuchar, thank you for your indulgence.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'll start with you, as I promised Senator Franken, Mr. Judge Drozey. I actually nominated my first federal judge here that I recommended to the president was also a magistrate. So I know how important that job is, and I also know that you are the chief magistrate in one of the busiest districts in the country. And so my question is just more about how you see the judicial system right now, with your vast experience, what you see as some of the biggest challenges facing our judicial system.
Well, Senator, thank you for that question. Maybe a little bit more of a parochial focus.
That's allowed.
Since our nose stays close to the grindstone in the Eastern District of California, we really are in a crisis situation. We've had one of the heaviest weighted caseloads in the country per active judge for over a decade now. That leaves us with an average pending caseload per active district court judge of, my understanding is, over 1,300 cases pending per active district court judge right now. That has tremendous impact on our ability to deliver justice within our district. We've done the best we can with the assistance of the administrative offices and resources that we've been provided, and we're doing pretty well. We are the second most productive district court in terms of dispositions per year in the country, and we've been in the top 5, I think, for most of the last decade as well. So we're doing well, but we are performing well in terms of efficiency. I don't think we can perform any more efficiently. We've maxed out on that score. And the situation can only get better with additional resources. So for us, in our district, that is the biggest challenge and the biggest problem with our ability to deliver justice.
Thank you. And I know that actually Chairman Grassley has been trying to make some changes to get the judges where the work is, and I've actually joined in some of those efforts with Senator Feinstein. And Minnesota is actually has one of the heavier caseloads in past years. I don't know where we are right now, but when we were trying to get temporary judges in place or other things, looking at it that way. So thank you for your point, Judge Donnelly. Thank you for your service. And I know that you actually also, in your very extensive background here, you were chief of the Family Violence and Child Abuse Bureau in the New York District Attorney's Office, and you saw firsthand the challenges we face in this country with the scourge of domestic violence and child abuse. I worked on those as a prosecutor for 8 years, those issues, and I know your docket will be different now, but how does that experience inform your future as a federal judge, if and when, and we hope you will be confirmed?
Thank you for that question, Senator Klobuchar. You are right that these are among the most difficult cases to prosecute with domestic violence victims and with child abuse victims, challenges in identifying the victims, many of whom are financially dependent on their abusers, challenges with very young victims, and many steps have been taken. It's been some time since I've been active in that role, but the use of child advocacy centers where a child abuse victim gets all services at one location without the need for multiple interviews, and having the opportunity to work with those children was one of the most meaningful and affecting experiences of my life. To see children who have suffered so much to have been so resilient and so able to survive unimaginable situations. I hope that it will make me a better judge. I feel that it has in my 6 years on the Supreme Court. I'm very lucky to have had that chance, and I thank you for the question.
Thank you. Mr. Velardo, I see that you served on the Harvard Law Review and Chief Justice Roberts was the editor. So who do you think is the better editor of the Harvard Law Review, President Obama or, no, I'm kidding, don't go there. Don't answer that question.
I'll provide you extra time, Senator Clover.
Okay, so I was just thinking of your experience as a civil litigator, and a lot of times people that go into the federal judgeships are judges, but sometimes they also are criminal prosecutors. We put sometimes they're defenders, but what do you think you'll bring to the table here as a civil litigator? I think we know a lot of the cases are civil, and not everyone knows that.
Sure. My experience actually is civil and criminal. I've done a good deal of criminal work as well. But the broad experience that I've had, and in addition to as an advocate, as an arbitrator and a mediator and a law clerk, I think positioned me well to do a good job as a district judge. At least I hope so.
Very good. I'm not going to bring up the Vikings-Buffalo Bills game. I don't know if you remember this, when your fans threw snowballs at our players.
I apologize.
During a playoff game.
On behalf of the people of Western New York, I apologize.
Thank you, thank you. I don't think I'll hold you against it. They did hit Chuck Foreman in the eye, but that's okay. It was a long, long time ago, but we remember those games when we were quite the contenders for the Super Bowls. My last question of you, Ms. Hall, is just, which I would ask of everyone, but I think we have a good panel here that have given some good answers. But I think one of the challenges for all judges is just you have litigants that come before you. Some are rich, some are poor, some can afford really good lawyers and some can't, and how will you assure them that you will treat them fairly?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I believe that in my private practice as well as in my service publicly on the Joint Commission on Public Ethics and the Taxi and Limousine Commission, that I have developed a reputation of treating people fairly, and at the Joint Commission on Public Ethics and the TLC, specifically those who appeared before the commission. I also believe that the way in which I would conduct my courtroom, if given the opportunity, would, I hope, let the litigants know that they are heard, that their cases have been given the adequate thoughtfulness and deliberation. And I also believe that if I adhere to the rule of law and apply the law to the facts in the case, unbiasedly, that should give litigants the assurance that they need, that they were treated fairly.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I went a little over, but thank you for running a good hearing here. Thanks.
Well, thank you. That discussion about the Bills game reminds me of a Patriots game that I've yet to get an apology for. That was the snowplow game back in the 80s. So I share your concerns. But I want to thank the panelists again. I want to congratulate you for being before this and having the honor to be nominated. You and your family should be very proud. We look forward. We're going to hold the hearing record open for 1 week for information to be submitted to the record. There may be some follow-up questions, but we appreciate your time today, and I personally wish you the very best of luck. Thank you.